Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the Banquet Hall podcast. I am blessed to be joined with the one, the only, the queen of South Central Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Sticks College, all that, the one and only Jazzalyn Livingston. We have a great episode in store for you later. And for all of our new listeners, make sure you follow us at Banquet Hall Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that. You can catch this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure if you're tuning on Spotify or YouTube, then check out the video so you can see our beautiful Black smiling faces throughout the podcast. And yeah, I'm excited to get this podcast started. It's been a long time coming. I know our listeners are very excited to hear from you. So without further ado, Miss Jazzalyn Livingston, how are you this lovely Sunday evening?
Yes, thank you so very much, King Kyler, Prince Kyler of the South of the Central. Thank you for the invitation to be here with you this Sunday evening. It has been a long time coming. We have been trying to make this happen, have this conversation for some time now, and I'm excited that our timing has aligned and we are here now. And yeah, I'm very grateful. And we'll get into it. But first and foremost, I'm very grateful for you, Kyler, for many reasons. Incredibly proud of you and your journey. And it's been just beautiful being a witness.
So you're trying to make me cry within the first 30 seconds of the damn podcast?
Hey, this is nothing new. I tell you like it is. I speak from my heart, okay?
But and you're very much appreciated.
No, seriously. And I'm doing good. I'm doing good tonight, feeling good. Again, I'm excited.
Very excited. But we have been just chopping it up for the last 30 minutes before we even started recording. So I feel like we already did like half the podcast, but none of it got recorded. So we're going to have to let the listeners in a little bit. So I think I usually try to start with some type of little icebreaker to kind of ease us into the conversation. And I'm going to put you on the spot, which I do a really great job on. Don't worry, it's not going to be that bad of putting you on the spot. But you just wait. Before we got started, Jazzalyn enjoyed one of her favorite fruits on the podcast. And so I just want you to let the listeners know, how great was the mango that you had before we started recording?
I didn't know that was going to be the icebreaker question.
I know you didn't.
As a matter of fact, my mango was absolutely outstanding. Okay. Mango is my favorite fruit. It is my absolute favorite snack. So
absolute favorite snack of all time?
Absolute favorite snack. Mangoes are my absolute favorite snack. That is number one. And then fruit in general is my number one. And then maybe ice cream. But okay. My mango is delish. Absolutely delicious.
Okay, now I gotta ask the follow-up questions. We're gonna unpack this mango obsession real quick. Because the people gotta know, like, I just feel like when you're on a podcast, like, you really gotta break down what people are saying. So the important questions, with fruit being one and ice cream being two, do you like ice cream with fruits in any shape or form?
Yes.
Okay. Is mango ice cream one of your favorite ice creams?
It's not one of my favorite ice creams. One of my favorite ice creams. You're gonna laugh at me because you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's definitely an auntie's favorite.
Is it butter pecan?
Yes. Yes, butter pecan is still my favorite ice cream.
No, butter pecan's goated. Like, it is a very auntie ice cream, but it's also delicious. Like, I think that people will be sleep on butter pecan, but no, it's good. You don't got to be ashamed of liking butter pecan. Not on this podcast.
I got you. And that's my absolute favorite. I already knew he was gonna come for me. That's why I was trying to set it up. Because as soon as I was gonna say butter pecan, he was gonna come for me, okay? And my second favorite is strawberry cheesecake. That's where That's when I would say like fruit inside of it. But I like mango ice cream too.
Okay. Next up, are dried mangoes part of your mango repertoire, or you only rock with the non-dried mangoes?
I like the dry mangoes. I don't love them. I love the fresh mangoes.
Dang, RIP to the dried mangoes. Catching a stray on the
No,
podcast.
I like them. They're good. Like Trader Joe's, their dried mangoes, delish. But it's tears to it.
There's tears to it. Dang, somewhere a dried mango is listening to this podcast, just hurt because you just like them. You don't like them. You just like them. It's all good though.
It be like that sometimes. We like what we like.
What about the like, do you put anything on your mangoes? Like, do you do like tahini on mangoes, or you just like straight up mango?
All of the above.
All
But
of the above.
yep, if I have tahini, I would certainly sprinkle some on. I'm also not complaining if it's just as is. But I do like tahini. I think some of it is also, like growing up in LA
Mm-hmm.
and the fruit stand or on the corner. Yeah, like a lot of our brown community, I think there was a way of there was something built in that
Mm-hmm.
in black and brown communities too. And yeah, I used to love the fruit truck.
Absolutely. So you got me wanting some fresh mango now.
With the
And
tahini and lime.
I don't even be eating mangoes like that, but just something about like having to sit on chop it up with you while eating a fresh mango, and now we talking about mangoes, and I just want a mango. Like I'm about to go to the store after this.
You should. I endorse that. I encourage that.
We have the Queen's approval. Awesome. Last question. When you go to Jamba Juice or other fruit places, do you have to get a mango smoothie? Like, is mango a go-go your go-to drink?
It's not my go-to.
Wow, I feel like you letting mangoes down. You're
I
not a mango a go-go person?
No, I do like mango go-go. So anytime I get it or someone bought it from me, I love it. I love it. Like I said, I like what I like. And I do like I love mangoes in my smoothie. Like
Mm.
whatever else is in it, I really do love mangoes in the smoothie. I also like it by itself, but I like I don't know if you ever had white gummy.
That sugary ass.
It's good. It's good. I think it's because like it was one of the first ones I've gotten. So I think ever since then, like middle school,
Mm,
it's been my go-to. But I've tried other ones.
awesome. Well, thank you for participating in the first ever Mango Corner of the Banquet Hall podcast. I think this podcast episode we call Jazzalyn and the Mango Tree. Uh,
Not just the mango tree.
I feel like every podcast I try to bring something out of the podcast where it's like you didn't turn on this podcast to hear about you talk about mangoes. People probably just like, "Ooh, Jazzy on a podcast. Let's see what she talking about." We're gonna be talking about leadership. We could talk about the prison system, and then we started a podcast talking about mangoes.
Mangoes. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Thank y'all for tuning in to this mango discussion. We'll catch y'all next episode. Nah. But I think it's important to paint a full picture because maybe somebody's listening like, hey, I didn't know Jazzy liked mangoes like that.
Well, fun fact. It's my favorite snack. And now they know.
Fun fact is her favorite snack. You sound like a poet. You should write a book or something, but we'll get to that later.
I am about to play with you, Kyla. You starting early too.
I am starting early. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a minute. Like I think we alluded to it, but originally we were supposed to record this a month ago, but I think that the universe had other plans for when the timing was right. And here we are this evening, and this is the right time for the podcast to happen. So I'm just excited to share virtual space with you. I think that we have a lot of conversations just in general that could all be podcasts. Like I feel like every time like you either randomly call me or we randomly interact, it end up somewhere deep. Like just it's like, oh, how's your day going? And all of a sudden we talk about like, what does love really mean? Like I love it. We
You're
have a lot of stuff to get to on this podcast. I'm excited. What was you gonna say?
No, I'm excited. And you're so right. I think the last call we had, you was like, dang, I should have recorded that.
Man, because it just be just wisdom. Because anybody listening to this podcast who knows you will know that once you get on the Jazzalyn soapbox, it's like, damn, like we was just chilling, but all of a sudden, like, I want to go dismantle like capitalism right now. Like, where do we start today? Because you
Yeah.
just you galvanize the troops mid sentence, you affirm everybody. You got the whole package where people would just be like, I can't do this today. I can't. Let's get it. And that's why you're on this podcast.
Oh, wow. I hope I can live up to all of that.
Oh, you absolutely will.
Consistently. Because truthfully, and I feel like we can take it wherever. But there's just so much that I learned just in the power of community and yeah, finding a real core belief that is possible, whatever that is. I think, I know, you and I met at UCSD at a very important and pivotal time in both of our lives. At UC San Diego, and then also in our country at large. Like, yeah, it was a lot that we were grappling with as young people, young adults, some of us not even feeling like adults, but I guess
I
they
say
say
I
when
was a
you're
kid.
18 and your freshman year, you were not even you wasn't even 18 yet.
So why don't we go ahead and start there? Usually I start with asking where you're from, but we'll get there. We'll come back to that. What is your recollection of how we met slash when we met? Like let's paint the picture for people. When did we meet? How did we meet? From what you remember, and I'll fill in with my memory as we go.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we met, this was, I want to say 2013,
Mm-hmm.
fall of 2013. Yeah, it was fall of 2013. It was my third year of college, and you were starting your first year at UCSD. We had a mutual friend, Brelan,
Mm-hmm. Shout out to
and
B Scoops.
yeah, B Scoops. Yeah, that B Scoops was the connector.
Yep.
Yeah, Brelan was the connector, and me and Brelan, we also lived together. We were best
Mm-hmm.
friends in college, and we also yeah, we lived together, and you came over. She had invited you over. This is welcome week.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
day two of my UCSD experience.
yeah. I remember that, and I think you were sitting on the couch when I came in.
Yep. Just in
You
my
were there
introvert bubble.
already. Yes, you were not talking at all. You was chilling. But you know what's interesting? What I remember like feeling, there was a groundedness about you, which makes sense. Makes sense because you're a Taurus. But
Gang
like there
gang.
was, yes, like you could feel a sense of groundedness in you. So shout out to Taurus for that energy. Um, but I remember that. You had even though you was the youngest person in the room, there was just a great deal of character, wisdom, emotional intelligence.
It's an
Um,
honor.
I'm serious. Like seriously, there was something yeah, that that I remember. That was the feeling that I remember.
Mm.
Like when you have first impressions of people and there's different things that you'll feel about them or that what they'll leave with you. But that was something that, was there. And I think it makes sense though, because throughout our career, our college career together, you were a very grounded friend in my life, brother, resident, board member,
All that.
all the things. So, yeah, I'm grateful that that's how we met. And I met you the second day you started UCSD.
Yeah, it's just wild to think back on because some of the listeners know, but we alluded to it. I started college at 17. So I was literally an infant in a room of actual adults. But literally, like, because Brelan's actually the mutual friend of, was she related to them? I don't know, but there's these twin girls, Christina and Kayla Gooseby, who went to my middle school, and Brelan knows them. And somehow we got connected before I started at UCSD. And it took about 24 hours in the dorms where I was like, hey, what y'all doing over there in six? Like, how do I get there? Like, I need friends. Like, I'm, sweet mates ain't really cutting it right now. And so I went over there. Well, I think first, me, Bilal, and Salam, I think we like took the bus to like Target or something. I'm like, oh, I'm just going on this adventure with some strangers. Like, I don't know where the hell I'm ended up. Then I just ended up at your apartment. And then it's
Right.
like, oh, this is Jazzy. She's the RA and roommate. I was like, RA? Like, oh God. Like, and who would have thought from the RA in this random apartment I'm at to where we are today? But I do remember that day because I mentioned I was on the couch just quiet as hell because y'all was all talking. Y'all obviously all know each other. I'm just this freshman just trying to mind my place, not take up too much
Find
space.
your way.
Yeah, just trying to, because like I said, it's day two on campus. I don't even know what I'm about to get into. I have no idea. And I think it's kind of bittersweet because day two, I'm in this room surrounded by nothing but Black women. And then classes start 2 days later. And it's not the case no more.
You are not in those kind of spaces any longer.
No,
Like
not at all.
it's not built in. It was not a natural environment. It was something that, we had to be very intentional about creating. I'm curious I'm curious to know, I guess, your first impression then. If you're like, oh yeah, this is the RA, I feel like it's so interesting hearing people's first impression of me. And I've gotten several that that doesn't match me naturally. So it's funny to hear.
All I remember, you was busy. You was running in from something and probably was about to go to something else. But I don't know. It felt like this very like just mystery. It's like, oh, this is the RA's room because you had like the room in the front of the apartment, and it's like, oh, who's this Jazzalyn person? Like, I don't know, because I'm 17 in her college. I'm like, I don't know, is the RA about to be mad that I'm in here? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what college is. I'm first gen and shit. I came from Catholic
Right.
school. This is all brand new to me. I have no idea what's going on. I was just trying not to rock the boat. I was like, I'm gonna just exist in whatever y'all doing. If we become cool, become cool. I don't necessarily think I was like intimidated by anybody, but it was just a sense of like, you're this third year college student, like you're like a superstar to me. I'm
Uh,
a I'm a first year. Like this is like wow. I also felt kind of cool though, because it's like, damn, like I'm just here. Like,
all these upperclassmen.
yeah, all these upperclassmen, all Black women, like I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like I could kick it here, and lo and behold, every day, oh, like y'all going back to six, come kick it with y'all. And that's how he survived college. And we're gonna get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I had to think more about what the exact first impression. I just remember thinking about you as the RA. Like you were just the RA in my mind. It's like, oh, okay, like don't fuck with her. She's the RA.
No, fair. But then we became friends real quick.
Yeah, and then it's all written in stone from there. But in that moment, you were Jazzalyn the RA, and I was like, oh God, what does RA mean? Like, I don't know. Especially, I think part of that too is rooted in going to a Catholic school that had like a lot of rules and whatnot. So it's like this very authoritative person. It's like, oh, like make sure I'm on the RA's good side because I know how college worked. But you cool or whatever. We made it past the RA
I was the
stage.
cool RA, okay?
You are,
I, I was the cool RA.
but I didn't know that because
You learned for yourself.
yeah, I had to figure it all out because that's just how my life works. I don't think there's ever a time where I'm meeting somebody where I'm like, okay, they cool. Like I really gotta like, all right, let me see what it is real quick. Let me see how they are, how they interact and okay, now it's really circling back. I did at sometimes feel like not a spectacle, but I was just like first year student. I'm 17. I'm just sitting in the living room quiet. And whenever quiet Black man in a room full of people, everybody got the questions. They want to know where'd you go to school? And it's like half the people in our room was from LA. So we had that common ground. So it's like, oh, where'd you grow up? Why'd you come to UCSD? I'm like, I just met some of y'all. Don't ask me all these questions.
You're trying to ask all these deep questions about who I am. I don't
All
even know.
right.
I don't.
I don't know none of y'all in here. And it's early enough in my college experience, so I don't know that I need the Black community to survive college either. So it's like, I don't need to talk to y'all. Like I'm just here, I'm chilling. But I'm happy that I grew beyond that, and that Matthews D1 apartment was integral to me becoming who I am today. So kudos to y'all. Shout out to y'all, the Black woman at UCSD that raised a little 17-year-old Tyler the
Yeah,
fourth.
it was a joy.
But I want to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good.
I was going to say I want to rewind just a little bit to talk a little bit about where we are collectively from, because we mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast. And the first question that I usually ask people is where they are from and how did that shape who you've become? What have you learned from where you grew up? So you are from the greatest city on earth.
Absolutely. Los
And
Angeles.
what does that mean for you?
So I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. And Los Angeles County, moved around a lot, but rooted in South Central Los Angeles was my home upbringing and also where all my majority of my family still resides. And where my mom currently, we moved back to that same region, but lived in Carson, Long Beach, Inglewood, Compton, the Valley. So definitely a LA baby all the way through. But rooted in South Central Los Angeles and, born in the 90s, South Central had a particular conceptualization of its makeup, particularly for Black people, Black and brown people, for young Black people too. There were several facets of life that was shaping and influence what Los Angeles in the 90s was like. And so, for a lot of us, we tell the stories of, gang violence,
Mm-hmm.
floods of drugs, things to that degree, poverty, homelessness. But what we don't also talk about that shaped Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles specifically, are the social conditioning that created those kind of symptoms. High rates of unemployment because there isn't, jobs available and accessible to people that look like us. They're not being adequate educational resources to help nurture the intellect, the intellectual potential of young Black youth. So high rates of high school dropout shape that conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
The war on drugs shaped that conditioning, and the war on drugs, and there's tons of documentation of how that in particular was orchestrated, was actually also war on Black people in its design and its effect. Community violence, but in parallel with lack of community investment, positive community investment, resources that ensured that Black kids had safe places to play on at the playground, to ensure that they had accessible, not restaurants, accessible grocery stores,
Mm-hmm.
that had quality food. We're living in food deserts, but yet is liquor stores on every single corner. It's a Popeyes and a Louisiana Chicken on every single corner and a McDonald's on every single corner. But in that block radius, one Food for Less. And when you really think about the quality of food that's in that particular grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
also are things to really think about and consider and recognize that food is the medicine that feeds the body, that feeds the mind. And there's many conditions in South Central Los Angeles that really shaped and formed my life, my values, my conviction as I matured. It inspired a deep resolve within me, to really understand how and why How were those conditions created? How were those conditions engineered? And why? And even more importantly, how do we change it? Because those are some of the conditions that shaped my life in the 90s. But if you look here in 2023, almost 30 years later, I was born in 93, we're dealing with those same kind of consequences. And in some ways, in some effects, even worse, because when the war on drugs took place, it also locked up hundreds upon thousands of Black bodies currently in cages all throughout the state of California because of some of those conditions, because of some of those laws. And at the time, some of that was also war on marijuana. And yet we see in 2023, there's still individuals who have suffered lifelong disruptions of quality of life because they've been locked in cages because of just the possession of it. And imagine the consequence of that over the years, generation, that now, let's say that father that went to jail for that reason, even if, let's say it's a pound.
Yeah.
And maybe they had something else that, was low level, but now it's compounded. And now that father has to be incarcerated for six months to a year. Now it's a child who does not have access to her father, for that father to help financially take care of that child, to emotionally and mentally nurture that child, to help develop that child. No, they're locked in a cage.
Right.
And there's no positive level of an engagement with that child and the resources that man can be providing to his family, to his community. So I could talk about that all day, but those are the things that have shaped my understanding, my resolve, my heart for really wanting to understand, how do we get here? Why did we get here? And how do we change it? For many reasons. I have many reasons to change those conditions. We all do.
Listeners, I told y'all.
There
I'm
you
like,
go.
let's end the podcast here and let's go do it. Like, what's the plan?
There you go.
I sincerely think that just hearing you just tie that all to growing up in Los Angeles, I think that there's times when people can talk about like where they're from and just think about like, oh, this is where I used to hang out. This is the church I went to, but really thinking about the systems that were at play of where you grew up in and just how layered and layered those impacts are. And of course, like, not surfacey, but that was just the surface of like you mentioned, everything that you could have talked about in relation to what all that means for just people in Los Angeles in general. But you can even take that as far as what that means for you and your family, what that means for your loved ones, your friends, my family, like anybody's families that grew up in the city of Los Angeles. And one of the things that you specifically touched on was just the prison system and how the prison system has longitudinal impacts on everything in a person's life and their family's life and their community's lives, and just how we talk about those who have been incarcerated and just how dehumanizing that process can be, how the system really sets them up for failure and does nothing to supplement them. And so this was something I originally was going to ask a little later in the podcast, but I think is a little fitting to bring up here. There was a time in 2021, this is actually June 2021, when you came to San Diego, and we were talking. Don't laugh before I even get to the question. I'm happy that we're on the same page, but June 2021, you came to visit at my apartment, and we're just catching up outside as we do. At this time, I think you were not working, and I was like, wow, like I don't think I've ever seen you not working, and I was so happy to hear you not working. And I was just asking, I think something along the lines like what's next for you, like what's your goal? And you're like, yeah, I want to dismantle the prison system. I was like, Jazzy, Yes, and it's not even, it's like I fully believe you can do it too. It wasn't even that. But it's just the way that you said, I want to dismantle the prison system. Like you're like, oh, you're trying to go to Jack in the Box real quick. Like it's just light work. It's like, nah, like I want to dismantle the prison system. And I've never in my life heard something as gangsta as that. Because that's how we should be talking about it. That's how these things need to be discussed as something that should be a near reality, a near possibility for all of us when we look at just the systems that have been in place. But I will literally never forget that because it was just like, yeah, I was like, I don't know. I thought maybe you like want to open up a little coffee shop or something. You're like, oh, yeah, I want to dismantle the prison system. I'm like, all right, shit, let's do it then. And
Yeah, it's a thing.
it is a thing, but it's just it was such a you moment, and I mean that in the most loving, like
Oh, I know.
admirable, inspirational way possible. Because it's like, damn, like I think I was having a rough day that day too. But I was like, if Jazzy can just dismantle the prison system on a Tuesday, I could do whatever. So why don't we just give a little bit more leeway, just talking about like this mission? Not that this is like your core mission in life, but one part of your life to be dedicated to just dismantling, transforming just the prison system in general. When you look back at that conversation we had and how easy it was for you to say that, why do you think it is easy for you to say that that's like a mission of yours in your life?
Yeah, a great question. I know we were laughing kind of in preparation for this question because we have talked about this thoroughly, but you always keep me accountable to that. So thank you for asking again. You know, that clear realization, um, that clear commitment, truthfully, was birthed out of being a witness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I witnessed family members, loved ones, um, get stripped of their human dignity in that system. I witnessed my brother for nearly 13 years get stripped of his entire childhood, manhood, going into adulthood through that system. And I was 14 years old. He was 16 years old when he got sentenced and tried as an adult, even though he was 16 years old, had never had any prior offense. And I won't go into the details of the case, but if you really look at it plainly, the time didn't fit the time didn't fit.
Right.
It didn't fit. And not only didn't it fit, when there was an agreement that was signed into by a judge in writing, it didn't get honored once he turned 18 years old. So not only did he get stripped of his childhood, he got stripped of the legal documents that was signed to give him the opportunity to remain in a juvenile space as he is developing. But no, he gets sent off to prison as soon as he turns 18 years old. He was 16 years old. First off, he was a child. And, our family was not equipped, prepared, or resourced to a degree to be able to hire quality support to advocate on his behalf. And there's reasons and designs of that particular system that keeps a lot of Black people and people who are most vulnerable funneled and continuously cycled into the prison system. And so really what birthed that very clearly in my spirit is because I was a witness. But not only was I a witness, I'm a sister who was impacted by that. I am a sibling who lost a sibling to a system like that. I've cried the tears of what it feels like to watch and witness my brother through bulletproof glass windows and talking for 1 hour, and it's the closest contact that I have with him. Or being on the phone call for 15 minutes, and as soon as those 15 minutes come up, click. I might have not even got the chance to say I love you, and that could have been the last time. And it's that experience for nearly 13 years as a sister that I felt, I seen, I experienced. The first time I ever really got on a flight in a plane in my life, my mom took me, I guess, when I was 1 or 2. I don't remember that. Obviously, I was too young, but the first time I ever remember, and I was actually on my own ticket, I was 19 going on 20, I think, or I was about 20 already, and I was flying to Oklahoma. And I was flying to visit my brother in a prison in the state of Oklahoma. Because over time, he got displaced in private prisons, further away from his family in California, in other states. And he happened to find himself in Oklahoma. And I was curious as to, is he in an Oklahoma State prison, or what's, like, I don't understand how this thing works. No, he's in a California-owned prison that happens to be housed in the state of Oklahoma. It's as if the state of California bought real estate in Oklahoma, and it's a prison. That's my first time on a flight. My first time ever going on a flight was going to go visit my brother in Oklahoma, to visit him in prison.
Wow.
And think about families that are impacted in that way. Nobody's giving their family member money for flights. My mom is a single mother trying to do all the stuff that she's trying to do by herself. She has to pay for the flights. She has to pay for the rental car. She has to pay for the hotel. She has to pay for the food that's there. She has to pay for the machines visiting him, and he wants a hamburger out the vending machine, soda out the vending machine, a cookie bar or something out the vending. That money, not to mention putting the money on the books, not to mention putting money on the phone. Like that's the invisible weight that isn't being seen, that also is a part of the dehumanization, the stripping of economic resources, and the caging of people who funnel those systems. And it looks different for everybody. And there's degrees of incarceration. There's conditionings of incarceration. Solitary confinement is the most dehumanizing thing. It is one of the most dehumanizing, mentally and emotionally torturing and trauma-inducing experience that you can ever put a human being in. You are literally inducing mental illness. And you're already dealing with the people that are already vulnerable.
Right.
Who already have vulnerable mental states. And then you strip them of their humanness and their humanity. So for all of those reasons, for all of those reasons is why I say that. And I say that very clearly. And I say that because when I told you that in 2021, my brother came home in 2020, 13 years later. And he came back wounded. You could literally see the scars. If you listen to his voice, if you hear the way in which he's understanding and conceptualizing the world around him, the way in which he has to navigate his life, there's woundings, there's lifelong bruises. There could have been a better way in which they could have used their resources, because he was going to be a returning citizen. Just as many of the folks that are currently incarcerated, at some point, they're going to return into our society.
Mm-hmm.
And are we setting them up to funnel back into that system? Are we setting them up to be able to get on a pathway so that they can thrive? There's a better use of resources.
Absolutely.
So for all of those reasons, I do believe in dismantling the way in which we police people, the way in which we encage humans, the way in which we displace families. And that's what it does. It strips people of their humanity. And we should desire, especially if we know that this is our community, regardless of how we want to look at it, we live in this country together.
Mm-hmm.
We may not like what everybody believes. We may not agree what everybody has to say. We might not agree how everybody vote. We may not agree of how everybody worship. But we live in this society together, whether we want to or not. We are. And we're responsible for the laws and the rules and the community agreements to an extent that we create. And some of those rules benefit others more than another group. We know that plain and simple. I don't got to break it down.
Right.
And for, again, all of those reasons, there should be a stronger resolve to invest those kind of resources into what does community safety actually look like?
Mm-hmm.
What does meeting the basic needs of citizens look like? What if we're seeing mental health or substance dependence and self-medication, how do we ensure we provide adequate mental health support to get them on a pathway of healthier outcomes? Those are the resources that need to be invested in, not prison systems.
Mm.
You are masking social issues that need to be addressed. And for all of those reasons, there needs to be a higher agreement that that system needs to be dismantled because we all pay our taxes. And for at least those who do, know that that's a part of how your money is being used.
Right.
When I was at UCSD, I was advocating on behalf of my brother. Because here I am at UC San Diego, one of the top universities in the state of California, in the UC system, all of the things, top tier research institution. And it's 1.3% Black students that's at that institution. But over 45%, almost 50% of the prison system is filled with Black people. Is filled with my brother, is filled with your brother. And after I graduated from UCSD, I was a part of an organization called the African Black Coalition. And students discovered that our institution, our UC system, our resources, our tuition money was being privately invested into private prison systems
Mm-hmm.
in the state of California. And not only that, is invested in banks who invest in private prisons. That our money, our tuition, a percentage of my tuition is going into keeping my brother encaged.
It's a real fucked up loop when you really start to unpack all of that.
Right. And that's why advocacy is so important. Because what came out of that was the $30 million that the UC system was investing into private prisons directly. They divested that $30 million out of the prison system. And that's because Black students advocated on behalf of that particular issue. And not only that, $450 million was divested out of the bank that they were directly investing in as well, that was invested in private prisons. That's the power of belief. That's the power of how we dismantle things. And yes, it's not going to happen overnight, but it is being able to recognize how we ourselves also play a role in the maintenance of that. And we may not always see it, and we may not always connect dots, but there is a dot to connect. And so it's something that I pray this prayer seriously, because we have to begin to realize that We are literally stripping the humanity out of people. We are literally stripping the human spirit out of people when we could use those resources in a better way. And there's a clear connection between what we see in terms of enslavement of Black bodies in this country and engagement of Black bodies in this country. There is a correlation. So for all of those reasons, yet again, that's why that is important to me. That's why I hope it matters to more people.
Yeah, and I just want to a few things. Well, I mean, there's like 50 billion things I could expand upon in what you just said. But first, I wanted to emphasize for the listeners because as you were speaking, I was like, want to make sure folks know when we were laughing about like, oh, just dismantle the prison system as just something small at the beginning. That's more so just, I feel like you and I's dynamic. Nothing is funny about anything that was just stated. So I just wanted to make that clear for the listeners that that's more so just knowing Jazzalyn and all the passion that you have for just everything that you just mentioned. I don't even feel it doesn't feel right to kind of summarize everything you said in just a word. But just that passion, it was just funny. I was like, dang, Jazzy, like you really have the power, you have the plan, you have the vision. And so you could just say it like, yeah, like I want my eggs scrambled, like dismantle the prison system. So I just want to emphasize that one for the listeners. But two, I think that anyone listening to this podcast, I hope that you really just take the time to sit with yourself and just check in on just how you feel just hearing all of that. Because I think that there's a lot of listeners who this might be the first time hearing about just the prison system in that way. And for some, it might be the 15th time they're hearing this and just thinking about all the different ways that we as a society invest into these prison systems and just how much power there is in community and activism work to be able to make a difference. One specific thing I wanted to highlight that was brought up in a number of different ways in what you just stated was something that is, I think, I'm not going to say like the core foundational piece to our friendship, but something that was very important and impactful for me when I first started getting to know you more was that you were the first person. I don't know if I ever even told you this like directly, but you were the first person that I just knew got it because it was like, okay, you're Black, you're from Los Angeles, your brother is in prison while you're learning about the prison system in a new way and learning about just all the different ways that just society is meant for that to be your current situation. And as some of the listeners know, my brother, as you mentioned, was also in prison when I was in college, and he was there for 7 years and 9 months. And like, yes, people like we talked about prison very theoretically in a lot of classes and a lot of discussions. But at the end of the day, I was like, nah, like this is reality. Like this is something I'm going home to after we have this discussion. This is something that I'm actively experiencing. And I think that something as quote unquote little as what you mentioned about the 15-minute phone call and how after 15 minutes that ends and how half of that 15 minutes is some automated voice reminding you that like, hey, you're on the phone with a prisoner. This call has 13 minutes, 23 seconds remaining. Like it's just that
Being
ever
recorded.
yeah, it's being recorded. It's that ever present reminder is like, yeah, this isn't natural. This isn't humane. You mentioned like the vending machines and going to visit. Even the process of going to visit somebody who is incarcerated, they damn near throw you in jail just to go talk to somebody that's in prison as well. And I think that all those different things are very human, very real experiences for a younger sister, for a younger brother. And I think that once I learned more about your story, I was like, oh, you get it. Like, I think that's what made it really easy to talk to you in college. It was like, nah, like, not that other people didn't get at UCSD, but I was like, nah, like, you get what's important to me right now. You understand what it's like to be at this PWI, which, as you mentioned, was at 1.3% Black at the time. Learning about the prison industrial complex, you have the Trayvon Martin situation going on. You have all these different things going on. You're learning about all this. You're learning about Blackness. You're learning about the prison system, divestment, all that. And then it's like, damn, now I have language to describe what I was already experiencing.
Right.
And so one, just wanted to affirm that part of our, excuse me, that part of our relationship, because I feel like that's such a tender part of our connection, because I think that there was just a number of times where just checking in about stuff like that and being able to genuinely talk about just how complex it is. Because even if it wasn't like, oh, I don't know how I'm feeling right now, but it's just heavy, or it's just need someone who I can relate to. And I will never ever forget when I got to meet your brother for the first time, and just how much that just warmed my heart, because I'm like, man, like you don't even I don't know. I want to run up and give him a hug. Like, man, bro, like I'm because I that was my brother coming
I
home
know
too.
you. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, it's
like,
like, nah, like this, like
yeah,
welcome home,
like,
my dog, like my
hey,
brother.
fam, like, hey, family, like,
Yeah, like let's like the grill, dog. Like just something, like just so happy that, because it's just like it's just he's coming out the car to, oh, this is Kyler, but it's like, nah, like this is so much more than this moment. And
yeah,
we all know that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And when I think about my brother, shout out to Kirkland. Shout out to Kirkland, my big brother, my best friend, one of my first mentors. Um, one of the first people that I admired and desired to be like. He taught me, he teaches me so much still to this day. But as a kid, he taught me a lot. And, you know, I always wanted him to know that he wasn't forgotten.
Mm,
I always wanted to know, the way our prison system is designed, because it strips people of their humanness. It in some ways forces the family to also engage and treat them and think of them in that same manner. It's
mhm,
it's kind of psychological in a sense of how that happens, but it does. And then that increases a sense of loneliness and forgottenness within prisoners, those who are finding themselves engaged for many reasons. And this is not a moral right, wrong kind
right.
of conversation. Their level of community safety has to be a value no matter what. Um, but I'm talking specifically systemic,
Hmm.
designed systemically, not totally the actions of those who do wrong. In Kirkland, I'm grateful for his teaching. I'm grateful for his testimony, nevertheless. And, he's walking this journey back home as a returning citizen. And it hasn't been an easy journey by no means. But I trust that, and, my greatest hope for my brother is that he trusts in his baby steps. He's able to be gentle with himself. That he also find it's hard to ask a man to be patient when you've been patiently waiting to get home for so many years, but also to be patient with his journey as he reacclimate himself to a whole new world, a world that he's been grossly underdeveloped for, that he hasn't been properly prepared for, but by design. So I just wanted to shout him out and hope that he knows that he is loved, that he's appreciated and he's admired. So I love you, Kirk.
Wow. This is just the beginning of the podcast. I feel all fuzzy inside and whatnot. Hey, this is exactly how I expected this podcast to go, honestly. Like, and in all honesty, as you were speaking about like your mischievous to the prison system, forgot we were on a podcast for me, because, like I said, this is also just how if we were just on Zoom, this is the exact
This is what
conversation we
I'm
would be
talking about.
having. Like, I'd give less context when I'm asking you questions, but this be the exact conversation. So I'm just happy that we're able to have this platform to be able to speak freely about this experience too, because in reality, a lot of people that we mutually know, there's a lot of people in the community who might have shared experiences, and maybe they don't have someone who they can talk to that understands parts of what it's like. I always hesitate to say that anyone understands fully what something is like, but just understands the complexities that are at play when you have a loved one who has been incarcerated. So thank you so much for just the vulnerability, and that obviously you're someone who is more than comfortable sharing their story. Like you've given keynotes, you've done webinars, but I think every time we owe it to ourselves to share gratitude for that being vulnerable, because you didn't have to share any of that. You could have left your entire mission at a more disconnected, non-personal manner. But I think being able to share that part of yourself is so impactful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy
Absolutely.
talking to you. This is us. This is us on a daily. So it's a treat to all the listeners to get a little insight of the daily random conversations that Kyler and I have ever really had. Yeah, this is which is why we can talk the way that we do, and I think why the questions you know my heart. We've been a part of each other's journeys, and so it's easy.
It's easy. It's
It's
easy. And
easy.
don't worry, y'all. I'm gonna get on our head a bit in the podcast too. It ain't gonna be all all butterflies, rainbows, and mangoes.
That's a good one. We started with the mangoes. Can't forget the mango.
Can't forget the mangoes. So let's rewind a little bit more. Or rewind, fast forward. I don't know what button we pressed on the remote. I would just ask you the question. But how did you end up at UCSD? And I don't know if this is even a question I've ever asked you before. So I'm very curious just to hear about what that journey was like coming from Los Angeles and eventually ending up at UC San Diego.
Yeah, that's a good question. Very interesting. When I was so I moved to the Valley after my brother had passed. My mom wanted just a different environment. Went to Birmingham High School, and while I was there, I always knew I wanted to go to school, but I didn't know. I'm a first generation college student. I'm the first of my siblings to graduate from high school to get a undergrad bachelor. I got 2 bachelor's degrees, some master's degrees. And I don't say that to brag about it, but it's the thing that gave me light on this journey. And so how I ended up at UCSD, interestingly enough, I got waitlisted at UCSD, and I wasn't gonna go. I was going to go, where was I gonna go? Was it Merced?
Said he was gonna order UC Merced.
I might have, I might have actually. I
Wow.
think so. I know because I what was waitlisted to San Diego. Oh, no, it's Santa Barbara. I got accepted
Mm,
to Santa Barbara. I got accepted to Merced. I didn't get accepted to UCLA, and I was waitlisted for UCSD. Those are the only UCs that I applied for. Oh, and then yeah, those are the ones that I applied for. And then some of the CSUs I applied for too. And then I filled out the waitlist process, and I ended up getting off the waitlist. And I was like, well, I guess I meant to go to San Diego, because I was actually my first choice. It was either UCLA or UC San Diego.
mm,
And I went with UCSD, which I was grateful for, even though UCSD at the time didn't have the best rap.
right.
After the Compton cookout, there was a clear narrative that UCSD wasn't a welcoming space for Black students. But what was most inspiring about going to UCSD was the students in there, the way in which they organized their power, how they turned their pain and grief and fear and all the things that they were navigating emotionally at UCSD, they turned into a collective voice for power. And they demanded that UCSD, the institution, became responsible for the kind of environment that they create and invest in when it came to Black students and their needs and their resources. And so that's what really inspired me to go to UCSD. Got involved in BSU, and it really was birthed out of wanting to be in community. You
Hmm.
know, when we say it was 1.3% of Black students at UCSD, we mean 1.3%. It was 30,000 students at UCSD. That includes grad school, the medical school, undergrad. And of that was maybe 400 or 500 students, 500 students or so that were Black, walking around that campus in some form or fashion, which means that on a regular day basis, I could be in any of my classes with 300 people and not see not one Black person. And there's something very isolating about that experience. Very isolating, very lonely. And so UCSD's Black Student Union was a saving grace for many reasons. And I'm grateful that I came to UCSD because it laid the foundation for what leadership is to me and what it means to me. There's some great things in which I learned, and there were some habits that I had to let go of, or, as well as I'm a leader at UCSD. It's been a learning process, but I'm grateful for it. But UCSD opened my eyes in so many ways. It challenged me. It challenged my consciousness. It challenged my social awareness, but even more so, it challenged my self-awareness of who I am. How do I contextualize who I am in this world? How do I contextualize who I am at this institution, which is in some ways was a microcosm of our larger society. And the thing that grounded all of us, nurtured all of us in many ways, and not to say this was every Black student experience. I know for me it was. The Black Student Union was a space where I felt seen. I felt heard, and I felt like I belonged. So that's also what kept me and retained me at UCSD. So that was kind of my journey to UCSD. A lot of people oftentimes don't know that I was waitlisted. And so it's interesting how things are like, when they're meant to be, I guess they're meant to be. And so my journey, I was meant to go to UCSD, and, a little brag on myself. And I graduated with the most outstanding student. I was the most outstanding student in my entire graduating class. And the reason why was not just because of my academics, which that contribute to it, but I was also committed to being a student leader. I was committed to leaving UCSD better than how I found it. And I hope I did. I look back and there's a bunch of stuff that I know that didn't exist when I was a student that currently exists at UCSD, such as Black housing. So shout out to the RAs of Black housing, all of the student organizers who made that happen. Shout out to Kyler sitting at the VC EDI meetings, and Bree and Alexis and all of BSU at that time. That were also really committed to ensuring that UCSD felt like a safer space for Black students to thrive.
So now goes into the part of the podcast, so I get on your head a little bit and let you brag a little bit about yourself a little bit more, because you did an okay job at talking about your UCSD impact. I think UCSD is lucky as hell that they got you after waitlisting you. I think that they needed you. UCSD they absolutely needed you. And I don't think it could ever go overstated how much of an impact you had on campus, not only for the tangible work that you did for Black students to come and Black students who are currently at UC San Diego, what you did to help retain the Black students who were there during your time at BSU, all the selfless work that you did as the queendom of BSU. There's a reason why when you became chair, we started hailing you as the queen of the Blacks at UC San Diego. And for the listeners, I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. There would literally be times Jazzalyn would walk into a BSU meeting and we would get down on one knee, head bowed, all hail Queen Jazzalyn, hip hip.
I still to this day am bashful about that. It's very humbling. And more often than not, I was trying to get y'all up. I was like, it's time to get up. Please do not. I remember y'all had a whole plan at the ABC conference that year. I'm like, oh no.
We have to let you know though, because I feel like too often, I feel like especially Black women leaders too, like y'all don't get the credit that y'all deserve. And it was a very extra out, exaggerated way to go about it and completely unnecessary. But at the same time, like I think that we had to make BSU goofy sometimes. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Like, I think that a lot of the work that we did with BSU, a lot of work that we did in and for community, a lot of that was very taxing. A lot of it consisted of long nights. I'll never forget Dr. King had the I Had a Dream speech. Jazzy had the I Had a Midterm speech.
I knew that was gonna come up. Like, why'd you bring up the midterm speech? Oh my God.
I'm telling you, because I'm a podcaster, Jazzy. I told you meeting podcast Kyler today, and I just need to paint the picture on just what it means to be a selfless leader in community. And I'm not even saying that leadership is supposed to look a certain way, but I think looking back on my time being voluntold to be on BSU board, and just
And
thinking about how much of ourselves we put into being leaders in the community and just really exemplifying like, nah, like, oh, we're doing this thing. Kind of similar to the prison thing. Like, we gonna talk about dismantling prisons or we're gonna dismantle the fucking prison system. With
right.
BSU is like, are we retaining Black students or are we retaining Black students? Because if we're really working towards retaining Black students, we might not get that much sleep tonight. We might be hungry this evening, but we gonna be in this meeting. There might be a basketball game on right now, but damn it, it's high school conference. Okay, I'm gonna get this damn workshop. I'm gonna talk a lot of shit after it and be like, man, y'all know I missed the Laker game for this shit.
Oh goodness. I know. And you in particular, that's when you got into your Kyler work era. It was always there, which is why you were able to utilize it the way that you did. But you were top tier. You were top tier in your work ethic and in your leadership at that time. And it was an honor. It was an honor to work with you. I know I volunteered you, but I'm glad that you said yes.
But
That year wouldn't have been.
yeah, it would have been. But I want to make sure that we're very clear with the listeners, so they're all the way behind the curtain. So I want you to expand a little bit about what I mean when I say I was voluntold for BSU. You can allude to Kyler working there if you want to, but also I need a recap of the I have a midterm speech. It like I'm saying I have a midterm speech because I'm being stupid, but that's how I remember it. Like in my head, same thing. They got the picture of Dr. King like giving his I have a dream speech. In my head, Jazzy is like in front of all the Black people at UCSD. It's like I have a midterm. So can you paint the picture fully for our wonderful listeners?
Yes, let me try to see if I can paint the picture well. Saying this was what, back in 2014?
Yeah,
2014 was the year of the protests.
damn right it was.
It was the all Black everything year. We had so many sit-ins and protests and library walk takeovers and classroom takeover. We were doing a
They were
lot of
tired of our Black asses.
They for sure. They was like, what is happening here?
What
They
y'all
had
mad about now?
right. What y'all mad about now? No, seriously. And we were met with so much apathy on that campus. Most people are like, Mike Brown, who? Who's a Mike Brown? They're talking about my friend Mike Brown. Like, no. Ferguson, where is that? Huh? And, first off, I'll set this up saying, when I walked into leadership for BSU as chair, I was nervous. I was nervous. I questioned if I had what it took to be the leader of Black issues that were impacting Black students on our campus. I was questioning if I was well equipped. I was comparing myself to the other leaders that I admired, that had mentored me, that were my bigs, the Grants, the Elisas, the Fanons. And, when I walked into that position, I know that, and if you know me personally, when I'm committed to something, I'm gonna see it through. It might be interesting how I get there. Y'all might be like, Jazzalyn, yeah, I must spare all the details of the nuances of the things, but Kyler is not exaggerating. We would be up late after we got done with the GBM. We having another meeting.
Meeting after the meeting.
We just had a board meeting, just had a GBM with all of our members, with general body meeting for BSU, and then right after that, we organizing the next thing. And then checking in, looking around like, wait, did you eat? Have you eaten today? Did you sleep? What time your day starts tomorrow? 8 o'clock? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, those are the habits that I had to learn how to shift so that I can function well, not just do the work, but do the work well and function well. My senior year of college, when I was chair of BSU, again, like I said, we protested a lot, and Kyla always brings up the midterm speech. And most people, they see me as, the person that was the student leader or the person that does the speech or things like that. If you felt what I felt those days, especially as a student organizer, as a student leader, just now finding my voice, but having all this fight, all this conviction in my heart, don't always have the right words, it felt like, but one day we was protesting, I think the National Day Against Police Brutality. And there was a line of folks that were kind of blocking Library Walk. You know UCSD, you know what I'm referencing, but it's a very popular area at UCSD where there's the highest foot traffic of students. So it's a pretty visible open place in kind of central part of the campus. And so people have signs protesting, different speakers are going up and speaking. And, I was in a moment, we had been organizing the night before, and it's my turn to go up and speak. And, I spoke, advocated on behalf of Black students' needs, talked about the increases in our tuition, yet our money is being funneled into keeping my brother incarcerated, and other Black and brown bodies in that same cycle, yet there's this belief for this campaign to increase Black students at the institution. So all those things were things that I was talking about very passionately. My voice might have was cracking and shaking, but I will never forget the just the conviction in my heart. And then at the end of the speech, I was like, hey, I shouldn't be out here. I should be like all the other students, walking, grabbing Jamba Juice, nice, peaceful, sunny day. I should just be like, okay, I got 15 minutes in my class. Let me go look at the trees and, the birds and the bees. No, I'm in all Black. Half of the Black student membership was on the library walk with us. And that happened to be the day that I have a calculus midterm.
Cold work.
I literally have a calculus midterm 2 to 3 minutes before I finished my speech. And the only reason why I left Library Walk that day is because I had a midterm. I should be worried about my midterm. No, I'm on Library Walk advocating for Black students, advocating for people who are incarcerated, advocating for students across the state of California to not have tuition hike and increases. And I should be at school just studying, preparing for my calculus midterm, but I wasn't.
Right. That's the conundrum of being Black in higher education. It's like, especially when you really zoom out a little bit, we going to school in La Jolla, California. The beach is right there. It's always like between 65 to 75 degrees. It's never that cold. It's not going to be that hot. There's a lot of things to do in campus in the area. And what do we decide to do? Fight the power.
Fight the power.
But that's, like you mentioned, that's part of retention. Like, I think that at the time, of course, we all envisioned a future UC San Diego where students could choose whether or not they want to be activists. But for us, it was important for us, whether or not we were that, I mean, no one comes to college to be Malcolm X, no matter how much our family members think that we was on our Malcolm X grind.
Right.
But there was a collective purpose, there was a collective calling, and just a collective movement to be able to do that for community with community. So I joke about the having midterm seats, but I think that's just an example of Black leadership and just how when it came to like really like being with it, like it was like, nah, like these are the sacrifices that are to be made. And I'm not even gonna lie, especially when I was working at the BRC, the Black Research Center at UCSD, sometimes I would retell some of those stories to people, like not necessarily naming specific people. It's like, yeah, like when students like, oh, but I have a midterm next week. I'm like, yeah, we had midterms too. And it's not even saying like, yes, go get your good grades and do your thing, but do know that, yeah, sometimes sacrifices are made, and that's just a nature of where we find ourselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yes, agreed. I mean, that's a part of leadership development and really building the qualities and characteristics of becoming a leader. There's a level of sacrifice, but there's a balancing act. I think that was the part that I didn't know when I was in college. The having access and knowledge to the tools that helps to maintain balance. And it's not you're gonna find perfect balance ever, but to have the wisdom and the discernment to know when you screwing, like you tilting to the left a little bit too far to where you're gonna knock yourself off way far off of balance. And so always finding a way to aim for that center part, at least as best as you can.
What a bar. Just always coming with the words of wisdom. Yeah. See, it's just every time I talk, there's some sentence you say, or I'm just like, man, I need to write that down. Like I need to put that on a mirror somewhere.
Maybe in the book.
We gonna get to the book.